This demonstration we're going to look at deploying the virtual appliance vCenter server. So this comes as a SUSE Linux operating system built into the virtual machine. The virtual machine is used as the vCenter server to manage multiple hosts. There's no operating system licenses required. We have very simple config through a web browser, and it gives us the same user experience as the Windows-based version. So I've deployed the virtual appliance or downloaded the virtual appliance from VMware's website. The next thing to do here is to actually just deploy it. So what we'll do is in the vSphere client, we'll just come to File. We'll go to Deploy the OVF template. I've already downloaded and browsed through to the correct file that I downloaded from VMware's website. We'll select our Next button. Read through the information page here. Select our Next button, and then we'll give it a name. So I'm going to call mine VC. Select my Next button again. Specify where I want to install it. So what I'll do here is I'll stick it on shared VMs as a storage location, so it's in a centralized location. This means that if I get an HA failure, it can power up on another A6i host. We'll then select Next. In the case of the disk format here, we'll go with the thick provision lazy zeroed, but I could thin provision the virtual appliance to save disk space, and select Next. On the ready to complete, what I'll do here is I'll power it on after deployment and select my Finish button. This is now going to go away and actually deploy the virtual center appliance. Now this will take a couple of minutes, so what I'll do is rather than sit and watch this, we'll pause the presentation and return back once the virtual machine has been deployed and has been powered on. So the virtual machine is now being deployed, so we can close this down. And then if we just come in here, we can see that we now have our virtual center server. So all I'll do here is I'll just open the console up in my virtual center machine. And what we can see is it's not currently configured yet on the network, so I do need to configure it on the network. So what I'll do here is I'll log in as the root user. And by default, the password is VMware. Obviously in the real world, you would change that afterwards. Then just from the command prompt, we just need to type in the command to configure the network. So the command is /opt /VMware /share /VAMI and then /VAMI_config_net. Now we've done that, we'll just hit enter. Brings us into a little menu. So what I'll do here is I'll just start setting up the information. So the first thing I'll do is set up the IP address that we'll connect to. We won't bother with IP version 6. We will with IP version 4, and I don't want to use DHCP. Right, so I'll enter the IP address. In my case, 220. Subnet mask. Yes, that is correct. Next thing I'll do here is the default gateway. So we'll just say that's with interface 0 and 192.168.1.254. Don't have an IP version 6. Then what I'll do is I'll set up my DNS information. So my DNS server is 192.168.1.210. And the last thing to do is the host name. And my host name is going to be vc.vbri21.com, and I'll just hit enter here. And that's it now configured on the network. So we'll just exit out the program. All done. Right, so now that that's done, what I need to do is just come into the web interface, and via the web interface is then configure the actual virtual center server. Right, so I've opened up my web browser, and what I've done here is I've typed in the https://vc.vbri21.com, and then I've put in the port number of 5480. So we'll hit enter. It takes me off the website. It's self-signed certificate, so I'll proceed anyway. It's now going to ask me to log in, so I'll log in as root. Type my password of VMware and then type login. Now because this is the first time I've actually come into this interface, it's going to ask me to go through the initial setup. So we'll accept the license agreement and select next. Now what I'm going to do here is I don't have an external database. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to configure everything with the defaults. So that's going to create the SSO config. It's also going to create the virtual center config and install the inventory service. I'll also install the vSphere web client as well to allow me to manage my A6i host through the web client. So now we've done this, we'll select next. read through the information, make sure we're all happy with this, and I am, so I'll select Start. Now what it's going to do here, it's going to configure the database, it's going to configure the vCenter server, and it's going to configure single sign-on. Now this will take up to 5 minutes, so rather than sit and watch this happen, what we'll do at this point here is just pause the presentation and return back once the config is complete. Now we'll just return back at this point here, so we can see we've configured the database to be used by the Virtual Center server, we've configured SSO, and now what we're doing here is starting the vCenter server. So what I'll do is I'll pause the presentation again and return back once this is complete. Okay, all finished, so we'll just click close. And as we can see, all the services are now running. We're using the embedded database, we're using embedded single sign-on. Active Directory we haven't bothered with, but we can add our our Virtual Center server to Active Directory by clicking on the Authentication tab. And we can see that all of the other services are also running as well. So scroll this down a little bit. One I should see is Auto Deploy isn't up and running. I haven't bothered configuring that. We're also as well as we've got nice little buttons for doing things like uploading the sysprep files for guest customization as well, and we can relaunch the setup wizard if we did something wrong. So quite nice that we can modify all of this. On the database tab, we can see we're using the embedded database. If I go for single sign-on, we have our single sign-on deployment, and we're using the embedded. Authentication is where I can add my Virtual Center server to Active Directory. So what I could do here is go Active Directory enabled, specify my domain, which in my case is vbride21.com, specify the administrator username and password. So we can add to Active Directory as well. Have a look at the services. We have the ability to specify things like the ESXi dump collector repository and auto deploy. If we have a look at the storage as well, so we can specify where we put our log and core files. On the network tab, we have the ability to specify or verify the status of the network, modify the addresses, can modify the proxy. System tab, we've got information. We've also got the time zone we're currently a member of. So ideally for me, I should be Greenwich. The update button allows me to update the virtual appliance. Upgrade allows me to upgrade the virtual appliance. And then on the admin tab, I get the ability to specify the current password and specify a new password. So which is something that I would want to do. So that's the end of this very quick demonstration of deploying the virtual appliance and configuring the virtual appliance. Now what I can do is go into the vSphere client, attach to my Virtual Center server, and add my ESXi host to be managed by the Virtual Center server. Thanks very much.